Well, I promise my talk won't go till 6:15, so if you do leave, I might be offended, but just kidding. All right, let me pull this thing up here. And I'm a little worried. Dr. Beach brought in these books, and looks like his lecture is going to be a little more intelligent than mine. But it's great to be here, and thanks to Dr. Williamson for inviting me. I thought I'd start with a couple of quotes, and you can read them, but I think some of what I kind of want to talk about tonight, how I got to where I am today, really, for me, is sort of this kind of right place at the right time. I did this seminar, how I became a scientist, I guess 6, 7, 8 years ago, and the story then was sort of, I thought my life was a series of wrong turns, and somehow I ended up in the right place, but I guess I turn a year older tomorrow, so reflecting back, maybe it's the optimist, is right place, right time. And then just to quote from Emerson, that life is a succession of lessons which must be lived to be understood. As I kind of go through my chapters in my life to kind of share with you some of my lessons in how things have gone. So I guess I was told my students that I had to show cute pictures of my childhood. Well, I don't know if any of them are cute, but I'll show you a few. But to kind of start where I was as a child, I'm going to date myself here, but as a kid I grew up watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, which I realize most of you don't even know what that is. I think it was still in black and white back then, but Wild Kingdom was sort of, I guess, the crocodile hunter of the 1970s. But I grew up with a love for the outdoors. And this was certainly one of my favorite TV shows, watching them spend time in the outdoors and spending time with wildlife. And then, first, there's some obligatory childhood pictures. For my childhood, I guess there was a couple things that really dominated my life, and that was Scouts. I was active in Boy Scouts and 4-H Club. And so in Scouts, I liked all the aspects of Scouts, but what I really liked was being in the outdoors, and I liked backpacking and camping. And then in 4-H, my brother was actually a state champion rabbit breeder. I just liked to play with them and let them run loose in the yard. I wasn't as serious as he was, but I really found a fascination with wildlife and working with animals. And it really started to kind of give me some thought about what I wanted to do as I grew older. And then the other really influential part of my childhood was, I'm a city boy. I'll first admit I was born and raised in San Antonio, but a lot of my weekends and my holidays were spent on my family ranch near Johnson City, Texas. And so while I have great memories of Scouts and 4-H and running around in my neighborhood, I have a lot of great memories of my ranch. It's a family ranch. It's been in our family since 1845, basically statehood. And it was one, my great-grandfather came over from Kentucky in the 1840s, right after statehood, and settled this land. And at the time it was Comanche country. And fortunately, we're blessed that the ranch is still in our family today. It's been unfortunately subdivided, but among 5 brothers and during the Great Depression. But we still have a tract of land that was my great-great-grandfather's. And it's a working cattle ranch. We don't have many cattle, but certainly it helps with the tax break to have cattle. And I won't talk about this tonight, but we did enter into a conservation easement property about 4 years ago, and that's been a really great thing, and that will protect our property forever. It can never be divided, it can never be developed, and I'm thankful for that. But I grew up in this kind of country. We have a bat cave on our property, Mexican free-tailed bats, so I grew up watching the bats, and I grew up working cattle. Again, I'll admit I'm a city kid, but I enjoyed going up and working the cattle. And we still do it today. This is a picture just a few years ago of my middle son, Josh, working cattle today. So it's been a great time. And so that really strengthened my love for the outdoors and knew that I wanted to find some way to be in the outdoors. So I'll share one. I won't bore you with quotes, but I do like to read. And this is probably one of my all-time favorite quotes. I'll read it for you. For my part, I travel not to go anywhere, but to go. I travel for travel's sake. The great affair is to move, to feel the needs and hitches of our life more nearly, to come down off this feather bed of civilization and find the globe granite underfoot and strewn with cutting flints. And I think about that quote a lot, and really, if I could do anything, if I could live that quote every day of my life, okay, occasionally I like feather beds. I'm getting older, but that's really, when I read that quote a lot, I really think about that's really what I like to do and what I want to do. So, in high school, Scouts, 4-H, the ranch, I think I knew what I wanted to do. I had a path, and I think about this quote, and so if you could flash forward 30 years, this is what I thought I would be doing. There's some obligatory pictures of me with hair, but I thought this would be my life, that I could just somehow get paid to backpack the world. Well, that didn't work out, but I still enjoy backpacking. This is Colorado with my oldest son a few years ago. Well, I guess it's been more than that because he's in college now, but it's been a number of years, or a number of weekends and summers backpacking, and that's really kind of what I wanted to do. But like in life, you can take wrong turns and wonder what the heck happened. Well, I took a major detour in my life, and I'm going to try to explain to you how it happened. So there's a couple things here that relate to this. The first, I know that's the university up the hill, up the road, and we're not supposed to talk about them, but 1969, the year I was born, Texas won the national championship in football, and my uncle played for that team. And so as a kid, I was nothing but burnt orange. All my I know there's probably some Aggies in here, but my family bled burnt orange. And so as I grew into high school, I didn't even look at other universities. Everybody in my family went to UT, and that was just kind of the path laid forward for us. And I know Joe's going to talk about A&M in a little bit. So I got to get my pitch in for Texas. And then this make money thing, and this is not to disparage my parents at all, but my parents, you know, they're parents, product of the Great Depression. They wanted me to go to college to, you know, and get a degree that led to a job right out of school. And my dad was an electrical engineer, worked 30, 40 years in the defense industry. My mom actually is a proud graduate of Southwest Texas and is a teacher for 35, 40 years. And so my parents thought, okay, you got to go to college for a degree that means something. And it's not that they didn't push zoology, biology at the time. I think they were just worried about how am I going to make a career of this. And so I listened to my parents, and I went to UT, and I thought, well, I don't really know what to do. And so I'll just kind of float around in college. I'm going to try to quickly summarize my 5-year tour of duty at the University of Texas. And when my senior year in college or high school, I took a drafting class. I thought, oh, drawing's kind of fun. And so anyway, my dad was an engineer, as I mentioned, and so I thought, oh, I'll give architecture a try. I really didn't have a direction. But I started out in architecture, and after a year and a half, realized that I didn't like that. So I said, well, everybody gets a business degree. That lasted like 2 months. I think 2 weeks of accounting said I'm out of here. But when I first went to UT, my dad was served in the Air Force, and as I mentioned, worked in the defense industry. And he, you know, wanted me to consider ROTC, and I'm like, well, I don't know. And so this was probably year 2.5, year 3 of UT, sort of floundering. And so to appease my dad, I was dropping out of architecture school, the heck with business. I said, but Dad, here's a carrot. I'll go in the Naval ROTC if I can get accepted. So fortunately, I got accepted in the Navy, in the ROTC program. And so at least helped pay for college, but I still didn't know what to do. And this was the late 80s, and I'm looking around wondering what to do. And I said, so what does everybody do in the Navy that, you know, gets as far as a degree? And it's typically engineering. And I'm like, well, I tried that. I'm not going back to engineering. They said, well, people get liberal arts degrees. I said, that sounds fun. History, I like that. And I'm like, well, who's the bad guy we're facing right now? Well, of course, at the time, that was the Soviet Union. And so I said, oh, that sounds neat. There's a degree in Soviet studies. So I wound up with a degree in Soviet studies. And I know people like to chuckle. But I share that with you to tell you that no matter where you are, you can overcome that. And the funny joke, of course, is that I got my degree in Soviet studies the year the wall came down and the Soviet Union went away. And so my parents said, well, you might as well have majored in Sanskrit because you majored in a dead country. But anyway. So while that was all happening, I still had my love for the outdoors. And so, yeah, I should say that my dream, I guess, if I had a plan at the time, was get a degree in the Soviet studies and work for the Office of Naval Intelligence. Well, kind of like these right time, right places, I shared with you that I love to backpack. And I really enjoyed the outdoors. And on spring breaks in high school, my parents would actually let me go to Big Bend on my own. There wasn't any beer involved, I swear, but we would go to Big Bend, and I really loved Big Bend. It's probably the prettiest place on earth. And while I was there, my senior year at Texas, I was at Big Bend, and I read about this opportunity for seasonal backcountry rangers and volunteering in the park. It was very low pay. It was a seasonal position, but it was an opportunity to work in the park. And I thought, well, that's really cool, but I'm getting commissioned in a month, and I've, taken the oath of office, and I'm joining the Navy, so that won't work. Well, as I was literally a week later, I'm sitting in my ROTC class, and they were like, well, we have a new program that we're initiating where the Naval Academy students all graduate at the same time, and all the ROTC students graduate at the same time. And there's a backlog, because as soon as you get commissioned in the military, especially in the Navy, you get sent to a school for further training. And I was going to damage control school, and they said, so we're trying to stagger people's entry. You can delay your commissioning and pay and all that for 6 months. Sure, I'll delay the inevitable. And so I delayed it, not having any clue what I was going to do for those 6 months, but I came back and thought about Big Bend. So I wrote an application to Big Bend to work there as a backcountry ranger. Please, please, please take me. They didn't. But they offered, but they said we encourage you to apply to other parks. So I applied to every national park there was in the country, and of all places, I got offered a seasonal backcountry ranger position in, I love Big Bend, but what may be as beautiful, if not more beautiful than Big Bend, Olympic National Park on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. And so I went to Olympic National Park and got to spend 4 or 5 months there, basically from May through October, working for the National Park Service as a seasonal ranger, and basically I was a backcountry ranger. I basically, like that Robert Louis Stevenson quote, for 5 months I basically spent with a backpack on my back, hiking the backcountry, talking with backcountry visitors. It was a great experience. And at that moment, all right, I said, I know what I want to do. Right? And I knew that, I didn't know let me backtrack. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I don't think I knew what I wanted to do really later, but I knew it had to be in the outdoors. And so one of the lessons I learned was certainly to work independently. I spent much of my time by myself in the backcountry. And I think this is one of the first times for me working in the outdoors that instilled in me the importance of the human element to the outdoors. I think I talk about that in conservation biology right now, about we can't operate in a vacuum. We can't focus on species conservation and ignore the human element, because we're a part of this world, and obviously there are people in poverty, people hurting, and we can't ignore that. And so I thought about that, and certainly I was like, okay, sign me up. I'm ready for a career in the natural resources. But I had signed a 4-year commitment. All right. So here I was, eager. I knew what I wanted to do, or at least the direction I wanted to go. But now I had taken the oath of office, and I was commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy, and there I went. And I'll summarize my 4 years in the Navy. I spent a lot of time on this ship, the USS Spruance. I spent a lot of time at sea. And it was rewarding, and I'll talk about some of the life lessons. Most of my time was spent as a damage control officer, so basically fire control and flood prevention. Basically how to fight fires and floods on ships, which Fires and floods are bad for ships. And then my last tour, the last year or so, I was the anti-submarine officer, basically learned how to fire a torpedo. And frankly, if you know anything about the Navy, these things are just torpedo sponges, so you don't want to ever get into a battle with a submarine. That was made very clear. So I spent 4 years in the Navy, and part of a really valuable lesson I learned in the Navy was that I didn't like it. And that's not to disparage the military, because as many of y'all know, I'm still in the reserves. But it wasn't my calling, it wasn't what I felt in my heart, it wasn't what I wanted to do every day. And as an officer in the United States Navy, you have to actually formally draft a resignation statement to resign your commission, because you're commissioned. And I don't want you to read all that, it's not that exciting. But even, this was, 1996, so that was a long time ago, let's just put it that way. 20 years ago or more, even then I knew that I wasn't exactly sure. I knew I wanted to get into the natural resources. I talked about a career involving the outdoors. I didn't know what. Academia was not on my brain at this point, but I knew something about working in the outdoors. But I knew that whatever it is, I wanted to have a passion, and I didn't have a passion for the day-to-day grind of the Navy. I have great respect for people to make it a career, but it is a grueling life. Life at sea, life away from your family, and it wasn't what I felt that I was called to do. But I did learn some valuable lessons, and that is, as I've shared with you already, to have a passion for a career, to have a passion for what you do, and that will certainly be a theme throughout my talk, is that I feel that to really be good at what you're doing, I hope that you have a passion in it, and you actually get up and you're excited about going to work. I can tell you, I have long memories of Sunday night, Monday morning, dreading getting up to go to work. I didn't want to do it. And we were going to sea for months at a time, and while it sounded like an adventure when I was a kid, it was really hard work as an adult. But the other thing too was to seize the moment. When I was in the Navy, my 4 years in active duty, I don't feel like I did seize the moment. I felt like I was so fixated on getting out and working on a natural resource degree in that direction that I really didn't seize it. And I look back, and this kind of make the best of a bad job, and that is that I didn't enjoy my job, and I didn't put the effort that I should have put into it. In fact, I could talk later someday about why I chose to get into the reserves, but much of it was because of this. I've always felt a sense of guilt about I didn't put it all that I should have during my 4 years of active duty. And the other part was leadership. That is a great thing that the military teaches you. And when you're 22 years old and you're commissioned as an officer and you're on a ship, I have 20, 30 people under my leadership. Most of them are my age, some of them are much older than me, and they all report to me. It's a great lesson in how you have to quickly become a leader, because these people are depending upon you. And that was a great experience that I certainly think about today. So, yes, also, like any good sailor, I learned how to drink beer. This is where I was. This is where I was at the end of my naval career. I basically had a degree in Soviet studies, a dead country. We'll edit my GPA, but let me just say, under this black box, there is hope for all of you. My job experience was things like, like any good Texan, I worked at H-E-B, I worked at Bill Miller's, I worked at a pizza joint in Austin, and I was a naval officer. And I thought, who the heck is going to take me into graduate school? Joe Beach probably had a 4.0 at A&M, and I'm stealing your thunder, I'm sorry, Joe. But here I am, I have nothing going for me. Who will take me? Well, thankfully, that great university in Alpine, Texas, Sul Ross, took a chance. And I applied to several schools, and I literally got silence, right? Nothing. And I applied to Sul Ross. Of course, ties into my love for Big Bend. And I applied, and I talked to one of the professors there at the time, and I was like, Dr. Cannon, I was like, I have I have no experience in this. I'm not even sure I took a biology course in my undergrad career. But I want to work in the outdoors. I want to work in the natural resources. Please give me a chance. And he did, and I'm grateful for that. And you know, for me, he said the only thing is, he goes, well, you were an officer in the Navy, so we think maybe you're mature. And so we'll take you. And so, and I've been ever grateful. I'm very loyal to Sul Ross. It's a great university, and I had a fantastic time there. And so when I got there, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I said, I thought back to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. I just want to, hang out with cool critters like a javelina. And so I got there, and so we started talking about projects. And again, I knew nothing about biology. I just knew I wanted to work in the outdoors, and so I was really feeling my way. And I actually I think I took about 60 hours as a master's student, because I took every class I could possibly take because I wanted to soak it all up. And fortunately, I had the GI Bill still remaining, and so I could pay for my tuition. But I took every class I could possibly take: biology, wildlife, everything to learn. And we talked about a project with javelinas, and this is where I first discovered the issues with bureaucracy. We wanted to do a javelina project, but working on Texas Parks and Wildlife land at the time, they were all like, well, you're going to have to fill out these permits and paperwork, and we're not so sure, we've got other priorities. And so my first year there, I was kind of floundering. We wanted to study javelinas. We actually had radio transmitters available for a study, but I couldn't find a study site. And so here I am a year into the program. I want to study javelinas. Nobody will let me use their land. Well, right time, right place. Here we are back to Texas again. But I'm sitting in a class one day, and Dr. Cannon said, hey, you know who this guy is? And the guy next to me, he's like, it's Rick McIver. And I'm like, really? And y'all may not know who he is. He's a former sheriff of Jeff Davis County, but more importantly, I guess, so to speak, for this story, he was a quarterback for the University of Texas in the 1980s. And Rick McIver was the wildlife manager of the 06 Ranch. And he was he's a super nice guy, but fairly standoffish, kind of what you see sometimes in private landowners, and that is, we don't really want research going on our property, we're afraid you'll find something endangered and all that. And Rick and I struck up a friendship because my uncle and Rick knew each other because they were both lettermen at UT. We struck up a friendship, and over time, I guess I charmed him. Rick said, hey, why don't you come out to the 06 Ranch? It's a 260,000 acre ranch in the Davis Mountains. Basically, they own half of the Davis Mountains. And he said, why don't you come out here, let's see what we can do. And I'm really indebted to Rick. He was huge in making the success of that project. And so I'll fast forward through the project itself, but I actually was starting to feel like I'm doing what I wanted to do. I actually was getting to capture collared peccaries, javelinas, put transmitters on them, and study their movement, looking at home range, habitat selection, territory size between the neighboring herds, and so on. And this is where I got to wake up to every day, and this is how I got to spend my days and weekends. And so it was a really, really rewarding experience for me, and really kind of turned the corner. And so lessons learned up to this point was I wanted more biology. Sul Ross is a great program, but I was in the range and wildlife management. I think now it's called Natural Resource Management Program. And see, I had no undergraduate degree in biology. And all my courses there were wildlife management. I thought, I don't even know, ecology. I don't know evolution. I don't know the rest of biology. And so I knew that I needed more biology, but I also recognized the importance of field studies and the importance of a thesis proposal. And again, please do not, of course this is being recorded, but please do not, I'm not disparaging Sul Ross, but at the time, that advisor, proposals were like, proposal, whatever. And so I just my thesis just kind of evolved, and I really never knew where the ending point was. I just kind of kept tracking collared peccaries and kept, this is cool, I can just do this forever. But at some point my parents were like, hey, you are going to graduate, right? And it really underscored to me the importance of a proposal. And I try to emphasize this with my students, that a proposal is a contract between you and your committee, you and your advisor, you and your committee, to say, this is what I need to do for my thesis, and this is the endpoint. And you recognize that it's a proposal, things may change, but it gives you a clear direction for the work you're going to do, and hopefully it's treated as a contract, so you know the road ahead and your committee does as well. And I didn't have that then, and so I certainly valued the importance of that. I also really learned a great lesson of working with private landowners and the value of working with private lands. And I'm very grateful to the 06 Ranch for the time. I mean, basically once I befriended Rick and I met the owners, they basically just gave me carte blanche access to the ranch, and I could come and go as I pleased, and it was really great. And behavioral observations, and I throw that out there because I spent a lot of time, and I learned this, you know, again when I'm talking about my PhD, but I spent a lot of time literally just sitting on a rock watching the javelina. I would use radio transmitters to find them, and then I would observe their behavior when I found the herd, and they typically just ignored me. I had a few close encounters when you wake them up while they're sleeping. They didn't like that. But I really just enjoyed by myself sitting out, you know, in God's country, staring at watching javelinas, and it was a rewarding experience. And when I talk to students that are doing field work, and I say, you know, if you have a field component, you're studying a species you've never studied before, you got to get out there and just watch the animal, just watch the organism, and spend some time and how important that is. The other thing is get involved. You know, I shared with you that in the Navy I sort of just floundered, and my GPA was, as we know, edited for content. When I got to Sul Ross, I dove head first. I took a bunch of hours, I did well in my classes, and I immediately got involved with the, at the time, it was the Range and Wildlife Society, but it was also the student chapter of the Wildlife Society. And I got involved with that, and that really opened more doors for me. And so a theme that I will stress throughout this is get involved. And the other thing is perseverance. Perseverance, I say, is critical. And I had a lot of challenges that I can talk to you about later in that project, but I never wanted to give up. I knew I was in the right place, and I kept pushing forward. So at this point, I was at a crossroads. As I was graduating from Sul Ross, I had I won't say an offer, but I was invited to apply for a black bear PhD position in Big Bend. You know, I mean, what more could you ask for? Something cool and cuddly like a bear in the most prettiest place on earth. And for some reason, I turned it down. Or at least I didn't go forward with the interview. And I think at the moment, I thought, I love Big Bend, I love it here, but I want to see something new. I want to, you know, pack up my things and go somewhere else and try something new. And I'm grateful for it. I love bears. Who knows where that would have led. But I said, I want to go west. I want to go to Idaho or Montana or Colorado. I've always loved the mountains, loved the Rockies. I want to go west. And where did I end up? Well, I ended up in Louisiana. I wanted to go west. Nothing panned out. And I was on email one day, and I emailed, not this guy, actually that guy. I emailed what would become my advisor, and certainly a dear friend to this day, Paul Lieberg at the time. And I said, you know, I'm interested in graduates, you know, PhD, and working with you, and are there opportunities? And said, yeah, I may have some, can you come for an interview? And I came and interviewed with him, and we talked about, you know, at this time I was still fixated on mammals. I liked furry things, hadn't yet discovered feathers. And we were talking about some nutria and muskrat studies that he was trying to get going. And so Paul took a chance on me. I got a fellowship a doctoral fellowship to the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and we started down the road of looking at nutria and muskrat. Well, we were, after like our third or fourth meeting of I'm sorry, we have no funding, sorry, we have no funding. This is working with the state, trying to get money for this, because at the time, nutria were eating basically half of Louisiana. And there was concerns about nutria interactions, not only with the marsh, but the effects on the muskrat, the native muskrat populations. But we just couldn't get anywhere with the project. And I'll never forget this day. I can visualize it in my head. We were at a light, an intersection in Lafayette, and I'm all dejected because I've written like 16 different proposals about nutria and muskrats and all sorts of things. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And Paul said to me, he was teaching ornithology at the time, and he said, Clay, I had a student in class ask me today, why are egrets white? And I thought, I don't know. That's an odd question. But then I started thinking about it. He goes, you know, if you think about, and I'm not going to spend, if you've seen my seminars in years past, I've talked about this, but the idea of why do you have a striking all-white individual? This is not related to living in the Arctic, right? Think about an Arctic fox or rock ptarmigans that turn white during the snow. Why do you have such a conspicuous, at least to human colors, to human eyes, this very conspicuous color? And from that simple question of why are egrets white, I developed my PhD based on looking at polymorphism in egrets. Because as we know, like the bird that I eventually became to spend most of my life since then, is we have an all-white bird, but then in many egrets we have dark and white, and trying to understand this balanced polymorphism between dark and white morphs. I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm happy to spend hours talking about that, but that simple question really opened so many doors for me. And so I'm going to summarize my PhD because I want to wrap up and just give you some overall lessons. But it opened many doors for me, and certainly my continued research on looking at polymorphism and the ecological significance of behavior or morph. But other things that really struck with me is I really saw what a great advisor was like. Paul is a dear friend and just a phenomenal advisor, and I try to aspire to be like him. He's also one of these 60-pound brains, and so he really impressed upon the importance of experimental design and independence, to be able to work independent. And then the other thing I throw out here, because I know we're talking to many grad students here, is side projects. I developed a lot of side projects while I was there, and sometimes side projects collaborating with Dr. Lieberg, but many of my side projects were just grad students working together on various projects, and that has really proved fruitful. So just to quickly talk about my postdoc and then wrap up with my overall, here I am at 47 years old, and my life lessons. When I was finishing up my degree, trying to find a postdoc, which can always be challenging, again, sort of right time, right place. As I'm graduating, or about 3 months before I graduated, my advisor, Paul, said, hey, I've just got money. We've been asked to write a proposal. I want you to write this with me to survey waterbird colonies throughout the state. And it was a switch, because I had been focusing on color polymorphism and behavior in herons and egrets. And now we were going to deal with the challenges of survey. Not my most, favorite subject, if you will, but I recognize that in order to study these species we're trying to get at, we've got to know how to properly survey them. And this question is still being tackled today. Certainly my student Jared and I are working with this in the future for looking at drones to survey birds. But some lessons I learned from that is the importance of statistical approaches to survey methods. One of the great things about my postdoc was it made time to make time for publications, really make time for publications. And this continuing question that still haunts me, I guess, is what's the best way to survey a colonial waterbird? And so that leads us to here. And I throw in a couple things. When I was a graduate student, about 2002 or 2003, and I started to focus, one of my species of my dissertation was reddish egrets. I really was fascinated with the species, and at the time nobody published on reddish egrets, and I befriended a man named Rich Paul. And Rich Paul took me under his wing and really mentored me about reddish egrets. And Rich Paul actually, tragically, was fighting his second round of cancer, and he eventually succumbed to it in 2006. But even when Rich was sick, he would beat the drum about the importance of reddish egrets, and every time they'd say, well, who should do it? He'd say, well, I have this new aspiring PhD graduate, Clay Green, he's your man. And Rich really, with everything he was going through in his life, he really opened the door for me to be sort of the person for the Fish and Wildlife Service to go to for reddish egrets, and I've been thankful for that. So let me just wrap up with some of kind of my life lessons. I know I shot past the 10 years I've been at Texas State, but I gave a departmental seminar last year. I don't want to bore you with all of that, but kind of bring home some things, and I'm going to shut up. Passion. I really, I believe this in my heart that you need to be passionate about what you do. I truly get up on Mondays and I'm excited. I like coffee, so that's part of the reason I get up excited. Nothing like that first cup of coffee, but I really enjoy my job and I'm really grateful to be here. The second thing is to find a mentor and mentor others. I believe this, that all of us, no matter where you are in your life, you should have a mentor and you should be mentoring someone else. I believe that. If you're an undergraduate, you can mentor a freshman or a sophomore. You can mentor a high school kid, right? You can mentor your younger brother or sister. If you are a graduate student, mentor an undergrad. If you're a doctoral student, mentor a master's student. And obviously as faculty, it's our job to mentor students. But we as faculty, hopefully we never stop growing and changing and learning. It's important for us to have mentors, and I continue to have mentors today, and I find them very valuable. The third life lesson I would share with you is to get involved. I beat this horse all the time with my students. Join a professional society, go to professional meetings, get involved. It's not only important for jobs and networking and all that, you just get to meet people, you get to see different presentations, you just get exposed to many, many things, and I can't stress it enough. As a student, I got involved in the Waterbird Society, and I've been involved for 20 years, and it's been a very great experience. And then the last thing I'll share with you kind of is this seize opportunities. I talk about mentors. When I was in 2001, I was at an AOU meeting, American Ornithologist meeting in Seattle, and they sent out an email right before the meeting and said, hey, students, if you could meet with anybody, the most famous ornithologist in the world that you want to meet with, send that person's name, and if they're there, we'll try to pair you up. And so I immediately emailed and said I want to meet with Jim Cushlan. Jim Cushlan founded the Waterbird Society. He was a founding member of the Waterbird Society. He wrote literally books and books on herons and heron conservation. And I said I want to meet with Jim Cushlan. Sure enough, this guy took the opportunity to meet with me back in 2001. And in 2001, we just went and had lunch one day in Seattle and struck up a conversation. And if you can believe it, for 15 years, our paths never crossed again. But for 15 years, he and I have talked on the phone and traded emails. And then about a year and a half ago, Jim said, Clay, I've been following your career, and I'm really proud of the things you're doing, and I want you to basically serve as co-chair and hopefully one day replace me as the Heron Specialist Group chair for the IUCN. And that's 15 years later, I got to meet Jim again in Abu Dhabi last September. And my point to that is not to brag about me or that, but I'm so grateful that I seized that opportunity to meet with someone I really wanted to meet. And then he took the time to follow me over these last 15 years. So seize those opportunities. And then, of course, have fun. And if this turns into that, well, make the most of it, right? All right, with that, I'll stop.